Late birdie. Objects of American desire in the 1840s. Warm up! Warm up! Warm up! God manifest destiny, objects of American desire in the 1840s.
With moderation. I am an earnest, but will not equivocate.
William Harrison quote there at the end. Not equivocate, will not back down. The first album was called The Muppets. And an awesome song called The Battle of Hampton Road. It's like off the 187. Doesn't make them any less awesome. No, this one is not. I will try and get this one after night. So the last, the first one is, I think the first one heard, but this one today is number one. How do you do that? Who is Union playlist will get like same band, kind of So this class is it's kind of like you this big good start. Remember that?
Really? Like the giant ones?
No, what's that? Hello and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of very similar ages. Welcome to a very special Tuesday edition of AP United States History. How are we all doing?
Awesome.
Awesome? That is good. So we're still have we reached the point where we're still holding on to awesomeness of the last weekend, or are we thinking of the future awesomeness of the next weekend? Everything's about the future. Okay. So, you're depressed. Why are you depressed? Why? Peter? By 50 points? But don't think of it about you. Think of it as okay? You know, so. Okay. The last time we met, it was craziness right before the pep rally. A good chunk of us ditched and went off and pretended to be athletes. So, who? In fact, we're not going to say who. Okay, we don't do who anymore. We do random person 21. James, what is manifest destiny?
Was the desire for land and expansion west.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Anyone? Let's add to that. Random person number 19. Okay. Opening. Well, do you have anything to add as far as what is manifest destiny? Mm-hmm. They want to make something of it. Okay. Now, objects of American desire. What were some of the main things that Americans wanted? Zoe. Okay, so land and resources. Any specific places? Any specific places? Yeah.
Oregon Territory.
Oregon Territory, another specific place? The Willamette Valley, okay, that's cool, okay. It's a great college in Willamette, by the way. Where else? California, okay, and then there's a final answer, yes. Puget Sound, okay, Puget Sound, because that's the awesome port, okay, anything else? Yeah? Texas, okay. So these are the things that, that America wanted. Now when we ended last time, the United States had started a war. Well, wrong. I have it all wrong, right? What? According to the Dean Loftus theory, who started the war? Mexico, because they started it. But how did the United States get Mexico to start it? Yeah.
By going in, sending Zachary Taylor in between the disputed territory and saying this is I'm in America, even though Mexico thought that where he was.
Yeah. So it was provocative. It was provocative. Yes. He's literally sitting there and saying, "I'm in America." he just had an army there. It kind of, when you fly your flag, you're kind of saying it, look at my American flag, okay. If I'm sitting around with my my American flag and I'm running up and down in not America, I'm kind of saying something, aren't I? You wear that shirt, right? Oh, yeah. Right? Aren't you shouting America, America? Yeah. Right? See? Okay, that's kind of what he was doing. All right. All right, so we all kind of on the same page here? We're good? Okay, so. This is a painting of America's victory at Buena Vista. This victory was largely regarded to be one of those victories in which the United States should have lost this battle. They pulled victory out of the jaws of defeat, and so it will basically help make the commander at this battle, Zachary Taylor, the greatest American hero. And Americans, we do something with our greatest American heroes. We make them president. Okay. Here's kind of a map of the top people that will go into the Mexican War. Be John C. Fremont, Stephen Kearny, and Zachary Taylor, and Winfield Scott. So, where I want to start today is about American attitudes toward this war. And the Mexican War begins like most wars. Americans go, what? How do Americans feel about most wars, particularly when they begin? What's the usual beginning attitude? What's the usual beginning attitude? It's going to be over soon, and we're going to win. It's going to be awesome. Okay? And so we saw this at the beginning of the war. It's initially popular. The Nashville Union will print that the war against Mexico is a noble struggle to extend the principles of free government. Okay? This is a good war. We are extending the noble principles of free government to other people who may not have that now. Isn't that cool of us? Aren't we just like, awesome? But the war turns out not to be over as quickly. And when the war turns out not to be as quick, it gives the opportunity to people who were not so much into this thing to all of a sudden find their voice. And what we're going to see as the war goes on is groups that we sometimes call the conscience Whigs. The Whigs, we kind of divide them sometimes into the conscience Whigs, the people who are against slavery, and the cotton Whigs, the people who are okay with it. Well, the conscience Whigs, people like John Quincy Adams' son, okay, Charles Francis Adams, yet another member of the Adams family. He will start to state that he was opposed to this war on moral grounds. And what would be the main moral ground? The extension of slavery. Additionally, you're going to have people some voices that we've heard from before. Remember our transcendentalists. Well, the transcendentalists, many of them were also very much opposed to this war. Henry David Thoreau, okay, the tax that he was refusing to pay, that will lead to him being put in that jail, okay, that will lead to him writing that essay, Civil Disobedience, was the Mexican War. He did not support the war. He did not want his tax money going to paying for war to extend slavery. Additionally, we have Ralph Waldo Emerson. Ralph Waldo Emerson will say that the United States will conquer Mexico, but Mexico will poison us. In other words, he knows that when the United States acquires this land, that there's going to be a thing. There's going to be a division. There is going to be an argument over the institution of slavery. That this war is basically taking that idea, the issue of slavery, which had been carefully hidden under a rock during the Compromise of 1820, the Missouri Compromise, and is now going to bring it out into the open again. and it ain't gonna be pretty. We'll conquer Mexico, but Mexico's going to poison us. We see this in 1846. As the war began, one of the things that government needs to do when they send armies out there is they have to pay for the bless you.
Thank you.
When governments send armies out, governments have to pay for those armies. Governments have to pay for the salaries, they have to pay for the uniforms, they have to pay for the bullets, okay? Wars, shockingly, cost money. And whether, how these things get paid for actually kind of shows the power of Congress. So today, even though we don't really consult Congress as to whether or not we're going to go fight somebody, we're constantly sending troops off and doing things without necessarily checking with Congress, getting a declaration of war. There's still something Congress can always do. If that, they can basically cut off the money. And so in the middle of the Mexican War, you're going to have the Polk administration saying, I need money to pay for my army. And the Congress then will have to pass a bill authorizing the spending of that money. Got it? Well, one of these bills, a Pennsylvania Democrat by the name of Wilmot, David Wilmot, is going to add a tiny little amendment. So it's sure, you can have your money to pay for your war, Mr. Polk, but we would like it written into the law that any territory we get from Mexico shall be free of slavery. Now, Wilmot had a very carefully constructed argument as to why he said this should be so. What had Mexico already done? They had abolished slavery. And so his argument is, should we reintroduce slavery to a place where it has already been abolished? And what's so important about the construction of this argument is that you could basically be someone who's not, big abolitionist, I want to get rid of slavery and everything like that. You could be someone who just can kind of think of the logic of that. That, hey, we got rid of slavery. It's not, they already got rid of slavery there. Should the United States reintroduce slavery into a place where it had already been abolished? No. No, I think that'd be a bad idea. And so you've got a lot of people who weren't necessarily really abolitionist minded to agree to this idea that we shouldn't bring slavery back to some place that somebody's already gotten rid of it. That just makes sense. And so, David Wilmot's little amendment passes in the House of Representatives. It's now out there. A policy, an idea of not allowing this war against Mexico to be about acquiring land for slavery. It's out there. Now the president immediately goes, oh my God! And he comes up with what he thinks is a nice compromise solution. It's an original one too. Let's draw a line. Let's say at about 3630. And everything above that line will be close to slavery. Everything below that line will allow it. So in fact, he's talking about extending what had been the line in the Louisiana Territory and just moving all the way across to California. That will just continue that same policy. It's worked so far. Let's shove the issue of slavery back under the rock so we don't have to talk about it again. Won't this work? Yeah.
Is that the border on the above Arizona, below Utah?
Yep.
That's good.
That's precisely where that line is. Okay. Anyway, but when President Polk makes this compromise proposal, John C. Calhoun says, not no, hell no. He claims that the federal government does not have the power to do this. He claims that Congress had no legal right to ban slavery in territories. Why? Slaves were property. And under the Fifth Amendment, you could not take somebody's property away from them without due process of law. And so, since that is not what's happening here, since they are just basically putting up this just ban, this arbitrary law, Congress does not have this power. So in other words, what we've done before, the Missouri Compromise, in the eyes of John C. Calhoun, illegal. The old Northwest Ordinance, illegal. The federal government does not have this power. Now maybe a state does. When it's actually a state, they can do it, because that's not covered. But the federal government does not have the power to block the spread of slavery in territories. So can you see how sides are now starting to develop? Okay? You have some people going, yeah, common sense. Let's not extend it to these places where they already got rid of it. Yeah. You have other people saying, no, government does not have the power to do this. Okay? You've got very solid opinions developing. Now the proviso itself gets blocked by the Senate. And therefore, what we end up stuck with is the House of Representatives having to decide either A, stick with this and have a knockdown, drag-out fight about it, but at what cost? The cost would be you have troops in the field. You have troops in the field, do you simply cut off the funds to those troops in the field? Do you make it so those troops can't get their ammunition or whatnot while they're in the middle of fighting? And how many politicians do you think are going to have the guts to cut off funding for the United States Army while it's in the middle of battle? They may say they do for a while, but in the end, what are they going to do? They're going to vote for it. So they end up voting for the money to go to the troops. But is the idea out there? Is the concept that we shouldn't be bringing slavery into this place where it had been previously removed? Is that a concept that people can wrap their heads around, have a cause for, maybe? Yeah, it's out there. That's Polk supposedly trying to find balance. So anyway, the treaty that eventually will end the war is known as the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. But before this treaty was ratified, before this treaty could even be proposed to the Senate, it had to, in effect, get past President Polk. And President Polk thought that this treaty, which is going to give the United States a sizable amount of additional territory, everything that the United States had basically asked for before the war, well, Polk thought that was not enough. Polk looks at his armies on the map. He sees Zachary Taylor's army way down there in northern Mexico, far south of the Rio Grande River. And he goes, we should have that too. We're by right of conquest. We should be able to get all this territory all the way down into northern Mexico. We should take it all, says Polk. And the administration, for the most part, is sticking with him. They're going, okay, yeah, let's take more. But John C. Calhoun is going to argue against an additional amount of territory beyond what we had originally stated were our war goals. You see, John C. Calhoun is going to differentiate between the area that had originally been called for the United States, this area in New Mexico, and Arizona, and California, and areas further down in Mexico. Basically, what the differentiation was is that that northern area was very sparsely populated, not very many people. But if you go further south, the number of people increases dramatically. So what is John C. Calhoun going to say here? He says, ours is a government of white men, and we should not welcome into the Union any but the Caucasian race. So in other words, why should we not annex more of Mexico? Yeah. That's going to be his argument. And his argument carries the day. The Democrats will agree with Calhoun's policy, thus, of course, Polk will too. And so, a treaty will be ratified, which basically gives to the United States clear title to Texas, with the Rio Grande as its border. So no longer is the border over here at the Nueces River, it's all the way over here to the Rio Grande. The United States would also get lands east of California and California. So basically linking up what had been this border of Texas and California and everything in between and everything above. All of this is clearly now part of the United States because of this treaty. To get this treaty, the United States will pay Mexico $15 million for the land. Additionally, the United States will absorb all of the debts that had been owed by Mexico to the United States or citizens in the United States to a tune of about $3.3 million.
Is this in modern day money? Or
That's then money. This is then money. So it's a lot of money. But remember, the United States had sent John Slidell down with an offer of $25 million in order to buy California and land seas.
so it's a bargain?
Relatively. Anyway, we sometimes call this section, the Mexican cession. Mexico ceded this land, C-E-D-E, D? Ceded this land to the United States. This treaty will go to the Congress, and the Democrats will be very much in favor of it. But in order for it to pass, it will need the votes of the Whigs. Now the Whigs, before the United States declared war, had argued, no, let's not go to war, and then how had they voted? In favor of war. During the war, the Whigs had been arguing that this is wrong, this is a war of conquest, this is a war to extend slavery, but now that it's time to vote on acquiring all of the land because of this war or not, guess how the Whigs are going to vote? In favor. The Whigs vote along with the Democrats to annex this land into the United States by voting in favor of this treaty. And then afterwards, the Whigs will explain themselves, and they will say, we took nothing by conquest, thank God. How are they rationalizing this? When they're saying we took nothing by conquest, thank God? What's the rationale that flows from that statement? Yeah. Yeah. Because we paid for it. Never mind the war. We paid money. So, it's okay. There was cash. There was cash involved. It's up there. Any questions on this? So last words on the treaty. Before the war with Mexico, if you were in a political party in the United States, you could be from either section, North and South, and you could be in the same party. Okay, so Northern Democrats, Southern Democrats, Northern Whigs, Southern Whigs. And how could these people basically hang out and be in the same parties? Is they basically take the issue of slavery and not talk about it. They stick it under a rock. They make it the Voldemort of issues. They say it's the issue of which you do not speak, and therefore we can hang out, okay? I'm from the North, you're from the South, we're both Democrats, hey there. So long as we don't talk about slavery. The Mexican War made this almost impossible to continue. It was almost impossible to basically keep slavery out of the discussion. John C. Calhoun will worry that the acquisition of territory could inflame anti-slavery forces. Now, don't get confused. Don't think he's against acquiring the land. He's more just noticing something. He's noticing that because of things like the Wilmot Proviso, that basically anti-slavery forces are kind of up in arms about what was happening here with the Mexican War. And that this basically could give them a cause to hook onto. Northerners start articulating an attitude, an idea, that the South seems to kind of get whatever it wants. There's a line, from a song, whatever Lola wants, Lola gets. Okay? Whatever the South wants, the South gets. And this is just another example. The South wants more territory to expand slavery into, and boom, they get more territory to extend slavery into. They had a word for this power that the South seems to be exerting. They called it the slaveocracy. Aristocracy based on slavery. Slaveocracy. They sometimes called it slave power. That gets kind of confusing because you think it's the power of the slaves. No, it's the power of the slave owners we're talking about here. So that in effect the United States, that it's the tail wagging the dog sort of, that they basically, whatever they want, we do. They seem to be running the show here. They seem to be calling the shots. We don't think slavery is a good idea, but no, we get more land for slavery to expand. Why? Because they want it. With these arguments now out there, slavery is now going to be the most critical issue facing American politics in the 1850s. Slavery will become the most critical issue facing American political parties in the 1850s. And it will cause them to split. First, will go the Whigs. Split. Next will go the Democrats. Split. And when there is no longer any political parties that are cross-sectional, when you no longer have any parties that are both North and South, you no longer have a union. So with that in mind, I want you to think back. Remember on Friday we talked about James K. Polk and all his plans, all the things he promised he was going to do, all the things he did, and now all the consequences of all the things he did. And I want you to grade him. Okay? And then give me a comment why you graded him the way you graded him. So think of James K. Polk, all of his promises, all of the promises he kept, and then the consequences of those promises, or those kept promises. Grade him, and give a comment as to why you gave him that grade. Okay, so now finish up that sentence that you're working on. Now I want you to find somebody new. California is now in the Union, so you can all find yourselves the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay? When you're doing your Golden Gate Bridge, I want you to stand up when you're talking to them. Okay? You stand up, okay? All right? Stand up. Stand up. Stand up and find yourself a Golden Gate Bridge. Get up and stand up. Yeah, I know. I saw roots growing there.
I said D because he allows the arena to be such a problem that
Are we missing some people who doesn't have a bridge yet? Who's bridgeless?
Yeah.
You have a bridge?
Yeah.
You still missing a bridge? James? No, you're good? Okay, go ahead. Everyone have a bridge? You have a bridge? Alright, anyone missing a bridge?
every other thing can be.
Did you get a bridge?
Yeah, what? I remember the whole play. I was right here. I came right here. Kids jumped at me. I was like, oh shit. Falling over and making this shot. I fall down so long. It's so yeah, I climbed. What'd you kill? It's so hard. I was not funny. Those 30 days. Like while we got Starbucks, we wanted more Starbucks.
All right. Going back to home desk.
Would you give
Okay, go back to your home desk. Home desk. Okay, so hurry. Home desk. Okay, so I'd like us to now do group grade of Mr. Polk. Okay, so if he is awesome, okay, double thumbs up. Okay, if he's okay, he did some good things, above average. Okay, give him 1 thumb. Okay, if he's kind of meh, okay, kind of sideways thumbs. Okay. If he's kind of a downer, but not the complete epic failure that James Buchanan is, you can give him 1 thumb down, okay? But if you really do think he's double thumbs down on the Buchanan scale, you can give him the double downward thumb, okay? All right, so on 3. 1, 2, 3. There is a you gotta choose. Come on, I gave you like 5 different choices. Okay. So math it's not a consensus, but it's a fairly steady thing of meh to just above average. So let us say Kevin.
I gave him a C because he was effective in introducing his policies and expanding the nation, but he also caused increased sectionalism and beating.
Okay. Nice. Okay. So let's see. How about? Amy, what do you think?
I think I gave him something nice because I said that he successfully expanded America, but then he also increased sectionalism, splitting the Whigs and Democrats, and causing inflamed slavery debates.
One more. Chris.
I gave him a B because he expanded America, and he got stuff done. But he did increase sectionalism, but it was kind of inevitable. There's no stopping it, basically. Couldn't have done much.
Yeah, did I see any epic failures? No, I didn't think I saw a single epic failure. Anyone oh, you thought epic?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any real way that someone could do better than someone better than he did? What was the better way to go about it?
Perhaps not going about it.
Yeah, but there's people that just want one there.
So
there's
doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
So you gotta figure out your principles here. Anyway, so did anyone think he's just the greatest thing since sliced bread? Awesome!
Sliced bread came after.
Really? It was after? Come on, we were slicing bread for a long time. Okay. All right. But you didn't know that it was awesome?
That's why it's sliced bread.
It is. It's a very cool thing. So. Yeah. He allows the union to split. And does nothing about it.
Okay, there you go, Ryan.
Basically, kind of picture on the banks of the Potomac going, bye bye, South Carolina. Kisses. It's a win. Anyway, so, and a dough face.
What?
It's a dough face. I'll explain when we get to them.
You really don't like it.
Anyway, I didn't make that up, actually. That is dope. So, the failure of the Wilmot Proviso to pass is going to lead to the formation of what we call the Free Soil movement. The Free Soil movement basically is a belief that you should be anti-slavery. Why? Because it hurts the ability for a family farmer to be able to acquire land. That if you have a territory in which slave owners are moving in and family farmers are moving in, the family farmer cannot get the land because the slave owner is bidding up the price. That basically these two things cannot be operating at about the same time. That you've got the slave owners who've got their insatiable demand for land. Okay, gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it. Okay? You cannot compete as a family farmer. And what is the ideal of America? Well, the ideal of America, Jefferson said that we should be a freeholder society. We should be family farmers who farm our land and then vote and then tend our land again. That is what America was supposed to be. But what was America becoming because of the issue of slavery? We had more land for more slavery to make more cotton. Which do you want? Which America? What America is your vision? Is it the vision of free holding farmers? Or is it slavery? Which America? Okay. So basically, if you think about this movement, what it's doing, it is taking the issue of slavery, and it's saying, you know why slavery is bad, people? It hurts white people. Okay? That is effectively what this argument is. Okay? And in fact, it takes the idea, remember in 1844 we had the Liberty Party. And the Liberty Party had been a party that said, yes, slavery's wrong. But why is it wrong? Oh, because it's wrong! Slavery's a wrong thing! Let's not have it. It's bad. Let's don't do it. It's not a good thing to do. Well, Free Soil, in effect, removes that as your main argument. And instead, why is slavery wrong? Because it hurts white men. The Free Soil movement will beget the creation of the Free Soil Party. This party basically is now going to run with this basically removal of the sinfulness of slavery and replace it with slavery's wrong because it hurts family farmers. It hurts the Jeffersonian ideal. Now, by the way, take a look at the two arguments. Which one is actually going to get more people to the table? The Free Soil. Now, William Lloyd Garrison condemns this. William Lloyd Garrison says this is racist. William Lloyd Garrison says that this is white manism. Okay? But one more time. Which argument was going to get more people to the cause of being anti-slavery? This one. Which one is more effective at getting more troops? This one. Get it? So it is now 1848, an election year. And James K. Polk had made a promise. James K. Polk had made a promise that if he did his 4 things, he would not run again. He did his 4 things, he's not going to run again. That's a good thing, though. Because doing those 4 things, James K. Polk worked 19-hour days. He basically, he burned the candle at both ends, and if he could find other ends to burn, he would burn them too. He had worked himself so down that he basically opens himself up to disease. And within 3 months of leaving office, he will die. Well, this leaves the Democratic Party with trying to find a candidate in 1848. And who they pick is one of the also-rans from 1844. Lewis Cass from Michigan was known as the creator of an idea on how to fix the slavery issue in America. He called it squatter sovereignty, okay? The rights of the person living on the land. It has come to be known. It will be renamed, in effect, later by Stephen Douglas as popular sovereignty. So if you see this on tests, if you see this, you will usually see it referred to as popular sovereignty. Now what it did is, on the issue of slavery, this is what you do. You vote on it. Do you want slavery in this territory? Do you not want slavery in this territory? Vote. It's all good. So what's the role of the central government? Central government does not get a say. So basically, you just allow the people who move in to say whether or not they want slavery or not. You want slavery? Vote for it. Done. So simple. Vote on it. A simple answer to a complex question. Just poll. How do you feel? Should we have slavery? Should we not have slavery? Yes. Okay. But is there a flaw there? Or is there a flaw to just vote on it? What's the flaw? Well, maybe no women voting. Okay, but which you, unbeknownst to you, kind of hit on the point here.
That only white men.
It's going to be only white men who are voting, and so what are you doing? Basically, one group could vote slavery upon another group. Is that right? It's right to be able to just vote, be able to say, okay, well, there are more right-handed people in this room. What shall we say? What shall we vote that the left-handers have to do? The more brown-eyed people in this room. What should we vote to make the blue-eyed people do? Do you see the problem? Can everything be voted on, or are there some things that just you don't get to do that with? Because they're just wrong. So this flaw will lead to many Northern Democrats rejecting the Democratic Party because of this popular sovereignty idea. And what they will do is many of them will end up supporting the Free Soil Party in 1848. They called these people the barn burners. And what this was based on was an old Dutch fairy tale. This Dutch farmer had rats in his barn. And man, did he hate having rats in his barn. Oh man, rats in my barn! Oh, what will I do about these rats? And so he burned down his barn. By golly, he got rid of the rats! So now take the point. What are they saying about these Democrats who are going off and supporting the Free Soil Party? What are they saying about it? What are they going to destroy? Yeah.
They're resisting the ideal that they don't like, but they're going against their own ideals.
They may be going against their own ideals. Okay. But what's going to be the result? Yeah.
It could get split so that like, the Whigs could win.
Yeah. You'll destroy your party.
Yeah.
You're going to destroy your party. You know, you go, hey, I don't like what you're doing. But by doing it, by resisting, by leaving, you're going to make the other guys win. Barn burning. The Free Soil Party will run in the election of 1848. Now, early on, most of the Free Soil people were kind of the younger generation in both the Whig and the Democratic Party. Okay? One of these young generation guys was a guy by the name of John Van Buren. And John Van Buren knew that if the Free Soil Party was going to have any sort of traction, they needed a headliner. They needed somebody who's got name recognition on their ballot. So John Van Buren had an idea. Daddy! I have this new party and we need somebody to run. Daddy, please! Please, can you run for my new party, Dad? Please! And so Daddy, a.k.a. Martin Van Buren, will run for his son's new party. Now, this is not completely inconsistent with the Martin Van Buren we know. Now, remember, Martin Van Buren was the one who created the Democratic Party. He is the one who made the deal, North and South. He's the one who created that initial coalition. But he's also the guy who said that we should not annex Texas. That annexing Texas would create a division in the Union. And so, him being kind of in the anti-slavery camp, now all of a sudden looks, wow, maybe that's where he should have always been. And so Martin Van Buren will start touring around the country. He actually will make a stop in Springfield, Illinois. And in Springfield, Illinois, they wanted to entertain the former president. He's kind of a rock star. So they want to bring out the best known person in town to entertain this this former president. So the person who is kind of best known in town is this guy by the name of Abraham Lincoln. And basically, Abraham Lincoln will be, hang out and swap stories and talk to basically to Martin Van Buren for hours. So again, there's kind of this anti-slavery thing that Lincoln keeps popping in on. Anyway, the Free Soil Party will also nominate Charles Francis Adams, John Quincy Adams' son, as vice president. The hope is to get Democrats, Martin Van Buren, Whigs, Charles Francis Adams, to support this party. Their slogan, free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men. Free labor is not labor performed by free, but you are free to perform your labor. That's what they mean by that. This now leaves the Whigs. And what did we tell you about people who win giant battles that should have been lost? It creates the greatest American hero. And so who is going to get the nomination for the Whig Party? The greatest American hero, Zachary Taylor. Now Taylor is going to try and come up with a stand that is particularly different than everybody else's. The Democrats are basically saying, hey, federal government has no power in this issue of slavery, okay? No power, okay? The Free Soil Party says, whoa, wait a minute, they so do. They're going to prevent the extension of slavery in the territory. That's going to be a policy. What Zachary Taylor's going to do is he's going to say, well, hey, I'm a slaveholder. And he's going to defend slavery. He's going to say, wherever slavery is, I will defend it. But it will not defend it where it is not. And so this was kind of a split the difference type of view. In the election, okay, this was the poster for Zachary Taylor. I mean, look at these things on the justice, peace, union, adultery, a flag being held by, well, justice and peace. Okay. What are they saying? What are the Whigs telling us? They're going to hold this whole thing together. If you're looking for the team that's going to keep this country together, vote Whig. The vote basically goes this way. Taylor wins, but why? Once again, third party. The Free Soil Party will attract more Democrats than it will Whigs. Why did it attract so many Democrats? Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren, as a former Democrat, pulls in a whole bunch of Democrats to vote for him. With all those Democrats voting for Van Buren and not for Lewis Cass in New York and Pennsylvania, it allows Taylor to win those states. So once again, here we have that third party rule. Third parties do not win elections, but they spotlight an issue. Obviously, what issue is being spotlighted? Again, slavery. Okay, just like the Liberty Party, but this time it was with a different result. Last time the anti-slavery group hurt the Whigs more. This time it hurts the Democrats more. So third party spotlights an issue, and it prevents somebody from winning. And in this case, it's Lewis Cass. That's your president, people. Zachary Taylor, his nickname, Old Rough and Ready. I'm with them as far as old and rough. I don't know about the ready. What's that?
I was responding to this.
Yeah, we should film.
What's that?
No, he died.
No. So, Zachary Taylor is able to keep the issue of slavery kind of under wraps during his first term. Pardon me, his first year. But something happens in 1848, and news of it will start to spread in 1849. And it happened right here in California. There's gold in Demdar Hills. The news will spread as far away as Chile and China. It will spread across the United States. And thousands and thousands of people will all come running to California seeking gold. Most of them come in 1849, so we call them the minor 49ers. Okay, the minor 49ers. Yeah?
Why is the G in the tree?
Just cuts. Caught your attention. Anyway, these 49ers, when they arrive, most of the easily accessible gold is gone. The gold that was there for the taking, the panning, the easy gets, gone. And so therefore, you're coming here for gold, you're coming and you're getting disappointed. And what starts to happen is you get thousands and thousands of disappointed people, thousands and thousands of people who think that, wait, that was my claim, that was my land. And what will start to happen is an increased lawlessness in California. People killing people over land, people killing people just cause. And the government of California was a tiny, itty-bitty, Polk had appointed a governor, basically overwatching this thing, but he was completely overwhelmed. He had no real control over what was happening in the state. So when Taylor becomes president and he sees this problem in California, he suggests that California apply for statehood. When they go through the process of becoming a state, they can then set up a legislature, they can start writing laws, they can start hiring sheriffs, they can start bringing this whole mess under control. Taylor's a law and order guy. And he thinks that, you know, what we need, create a state, create laws, boom. This whole thing will get fixed. Today we've got Friday Night Lights. They had Friday Night Hangings. So California is, yes.
Wait, why?
So much lawlessness, people killing each other. So they just hang people. Hang people left and right for murder.
How do you organize like people to hang? Don't you need like a lot of people to organize someone, even somebody? Do you just hang someone?
When there is no real law? The law was basically whoever could be strong enough to say, I'm in charge. And then what's your way of keeping control is by rounding up people who kill people. And then what you do with the people who kill people, you hang them. And you do it publicly to make it so that everybody around goes, wait a minute, maybe that's not such a good idea. That was the idea. Anyway, so California is going to draft a free state constitution. And then all hell broke loose. Okay? You see, since Texas entered the Union as the 15th slave state and the 28th state, 2 more free states had entered the Union. And therefore, we now had a perfect balance of 15 free states and 15 slave states. And so now, if you add California, what were you going to get? Unbalanced. And the South, did they care about it being unbalanced in their favor? No. But did they care about it being unbalanced against them? Hell yeah. In the South, they get worried that the balance between the states will be destroyed, and a group that we call the fire eaters will start making threats that we're gonna if we allow California into this union, we don't want to play anymore. We don't want to play United States. We'll leave. We'll take our ball. We'll go home. We don't want to play United States of America. California comes in, we're out. So there. People were threatening immediate secession. So, the senator from South Carolina takes the stand. He says, I have a solution to all of our problems, ladies and gentlemen. John C. Calhoun says, we'll amend the Constitution. We'll now have 2 presidents. One from the North, one from the South. Each of them will have veto power. That way, we cannot have one section dominating over the other section. We will always have sectional balance because we will always have a northern and a southern president balancing out the power. Ta-da! Well, if you have this kind of solid, we're not going to play any more attitude in the South, you're also going to have it in the North. In the North, there was a group we call the Young Guard, okay? It is going to be the group that kind of came of age during that time of the Second Great Awakening, that group that's going to basically say that slavery is wrong because, of course, it is. Among these Young Guard was William Seward from New York. And basically, when the South says, well, if you don't do it our way, we're going to secede, he's going to say, there they go again. There they go, saying that if we don't do it their way, we're going to leave. And what do we always do? We then go do it their way, right? Not anymore. You know what? We just might as well purify. Let them go. Purify the Union rather than patch and preserve it. Because you see, people, it's time. You know, we have man's mundane laws that allow slavery to exist. No. There's sometimes higher law. And higher law says that this thing is wrong. And if they're trying to practice this wrong thing, we can't let them. We can't allow slavery to persist just because they're threatened to leave this country. This is 2 sides. North saying, we're not doing it anymore. And South saying, oh yeah? Well, if you don't do it our way, we're leaving. Okay? We've got 2 sides soaring up. So it's time, well, the president, how's the president feel? Remember, there was the president of the United States who told California to enter the Union. And so Zachary Taylor, a slave owner, in his 1850 message to Congress, will say, California should be admitted to the Union immediately. And rumor has it, New Mexico also wants to enter the Union as a free state, and we should let them in too. Why? Well, they followed the rules, they followed the procedures, they did what they were supposed to do. We let them in. This false balance thing, it's got to go. We no longer make these rules based on trying to keep one group happy. We need to just follow the rules. The law. The law says California can be a state, and if New Mexico follows the law, New Mexico should be a state too. So, you have the president basically saying, no compromise. You have the Whigs, the Young Guard Whigs saying, no compromise. You have the fire eater Southerners saying, no compromise. This is a crisis. And in time of crisis, who are you going to call? You'd think it was the Ghostbusters. You'd think. But I'm thinking there's no paranormal activity here. Okay? So, given the lack of paranormal activity, who are you going to call? What's that? AJ.
Is he dead?
Yeah, dies in 45. Okay. So who you gonna call? You got a crisis. John Quincy Adams is also dead. Who solved the last 2? Henry Clay. Who you gonna call? Henry Clay. And so, at 73, Henry Clay comes forward to give us one last compromise. Okay? Alright? So, Henry Clay comes up with a list of ideas. Okay? Some things favor the North, and some things favor the South. And it puts them all together into one giant bill. Now, if you do that, if you take a whole bunch of different ideas and you put them into one big bill, it's called an omnibus. Okay, so say that 3 times fast. Omnibus, omnibus, omnibus. Okay? So an omnibus bill is a bill that has many different ideas. The problem is it didn't work. Henry Clay is not able to get it done. Not because his ideas wouldn't work, but because his approach was wrong. So to get this over the finish line, okay? So basically, Henry Clay gets it, to the 1-inch line, but to get it into the end zone, Henry Clay needs help. And basically, who he calls upon, who he gets help from, is a senator from Illinois. Abraham Lincoln was never a senator from Illinois.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
But Illinois.
Okay, but he is from Illinois. Okay. But this person, by the way, did ask Mary Todd to marry him, and Mary Todd said no, because she married Lincoln. Okay. So this rejected by Mary Todd guy. Okay. Stephen Douglas. Okay. Stephen Douglas, you don't know the song? Stephen Douglas may be the great debater, but Abraham Lincoln is the great emancipator. Look up that lyric, you'll be surprised. Okay? Come on and feel the Illinois. Yeah, you actually, I think you may know it, you just don't know you know. Yeah.
A question from before, why were they called the Fire Eaters?
You got it? Okay. All right. Anyway.
What else?
So, Senator Stephen Douglas from Illinois, okay, figures out something that Clay missed. Build separate constituencies for each part of the bill. In other words, you take the things that are for the North, and you say, okay, these are the North things. North, you want these, right? And North goes, of course we do. And then you take you take those pro-North things and you find hey, you want to save the Union, don't you? Come on, save the Union with me. You find the few compromise-minded people in the South, and you get it done. You then take the pro-South things, and you go, South, you want these things, and the South goes, okay. And then you go to the North, and you go, hey, you want to save the Union, don't ya? Come on, save the Union with me! Go save the Union! Okay? And you find these compromise-minded people in the North, and you market it to them. So it's all the same ideas. It's all Clay's ideas. But you market them to separate coalitions to get them done. This was the genius, and it was genius, of Stephen Douglas. But this still does not get us all the way across. So we move from the 1-inch line to the 1 centimeter line, but we didn't cross the plane of the goal line. We're still not in. It still took some more work. Daniel Webster. Now, we haven't talked much about Daniel Webster, but there were perhaps, during this era, 3 just heavily solid members of Congress that basically were kind of the dominant people in Congress at that time. One was Henry Clay. The other was John C. Calhoun. The third is Daniel Webster. Daniel Webster is most known for his stirring speeches to preserve the Union. Keeping the Union together is his most notable thing. Stephen Douglas will give a speech on the 7th of March. It's now called the 7th of March speech, okay? In which he urges these northern people that were still listening to the Sewards and saying, no, it's just wrong, it's just wrong, it's just wrong. And he says, but the Union. Union! Union! And he basically says that the Union is more important than your view against slavery. And this gets it passed. This gets it, okay, through the Congress. But the president is threatening to veto some of the bills. The president believes that California should be allowed to enter the Union without cost, without compromise. They followed what they were supposed to do. California should be allowed in. So, the compromise is basically done, but the president could undo it. However, it was a hot spring day, and there was a big garden party. And at the garden party, they were serving these huge, beautiful, icy bowls of cherries and big pitchers of milk. And the president saw the milk and the cherries, and he's hot. And he goes, oh. And he just keeps eating the cherries, and eating the cherries, and drinking the milk, and eating the cherries, and drinking the milk. And he gets sick and dies. Sometimes there's too much of a good thing. You know, give your body that much stuff which encourages your body to get rid of things. It will start getting rid of things at a faster pace than you're supposed to. If you follow me. Anyway, President Taylor dies, and with him, the veto threat. In his place is Vice President, now President, Millard Fillmore. Yes, we had a president named Millard Fillmore. And what is Millard Fillmore known for? Signing the Compromise of 1850. He's the one who says, okay, where do I sign? Come on, give me the paper, I'll sign it. He signs the deal. You thought it would get better, right?
Oh. Is that a wig?
Yes, actually it is. He is a wig.
Oh.
APUSH joke.
See what I did there?
Yes, my name is Mr. King Sean.
Yes.
Was Clay the person who had lost 5 times?
3 times in the general election, and then twice more he didn't get the nomination. Though he wanted it. So, this is the Compromise of 1850. Okay. California enters the Union right about early September. That's why on the Friday before Labor Day, we here at Pali High get to take off Admissions Day. Okay.
Do other states get their admissions day?
I don't know. We just have ours. Okay. They can do whatever they want. States' rights, right? We have Admissions Day. Okay. Anyway, so California comes in as a free state, no holds barred. The other thing that will go toward the free states is Texas, when it entered the Union, believed that like half of the entire West was actually Texas. And so they were claiming basically all of what is today New Mexico, a chunk of what was Colorado. If you name it, it was Texas, okay? Well, Texas gives up that claim in exchange for $10 million. Okay. Also, for the North, slave trade, or maybe the better way to phrase it in your brain, slave sales, slave auctions, are no longer permitted in the District of Columbia. Does that mean slavery is over? No. But you cannot sell slaves in the District of Columbia. Okay? Yes? District of Columbia is Washington, D.C. Okay? So, the District of Columbia, no slave sale. Big chunk of what was Texas slave territory now goes over to New Mexico, which is rumored to want to become a free state. And California enters the Union. So those would be the things that Stephen Douglas said, North, you want these? And North went, and South, compromisers. Okay? Now the things that went to the South. The first thing that went to the South is popular sovereignty, which had been a concept, becomes a thing. It becomes law. In the territories of New Mexico and Utah, that would be, okay, what is today New Mexico and Arizona, Utah and Colorado. Those territories would decide the institution of slavery by voting on it. So the Lewis Cass idea is now a thing. It is American law in those territories. In those territories, they would vote as to whether or not they were going to be free or slave. The final thing, and this is the thing that Daniel Webster convinced people to vote in favor of, despite how bad it is. He said, vote for this because the Union is more important than this law. But as we're going to see in a moment, it's a bad law. A really bad law. It was a more stringent fugitive slave law. Now, way back in the formation of the Constitution, we had put a clause into the Constitution that if property, someone's property, were to leave one state and go to another, it is that state where the property went, responsibility to send the property back. Code. If slaves escape to a new state, it is that state's obligation to send the slaves back. That is the code. Okay?
So if they escape to Canada, it's basically the only time they're free?
Yes. Right. Under that clause of the Constitution. Problem is, no one's really following it. If you managed to get to far northern states, Massachusetts, Vermont, no one was really doing this. Now, slave catchers were going up, and slave catchers were going up and catching slaves, and by the way, free people too, and bringing them back down south. But the states weren't really helping with it. This law is now going to put the weight on the federal government to enforce fugitive slave laws. The federal government is going to get into the slave catching business. Okay, so you had a question before I move on?
Yeah, I was gonna ask if New Mexico actually became slave states.
No, because the issue is going to be solved in another way before they ever enter. Got it? So this is Texas on steroids. Texas gives up all of this territory for $10 million. This is what the institution of slavery looks like after the Compromise of 1850. Orange is slave states, yellow is popular sovereignty states, green are free states and territories. So could this law be that bad? Could it be? And yes, it is that bad. Basically, what the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, part of the Compromise of 1850, if you were a fleeing slave. Now, let me almost correct myself right here. It is meant to apply to fleeing slaves. But actually, what it is anybody accused of being a fleeing slave. So, if you were an African American in the North, and a slave catcher points at you and says, "You're escaped slave X from South Carolina," this law goes into effect. As soon as I am accused of being an escaped slave, I cannot testify on my own behalf. I can't say anything. As soon as I'm accused, I get to say, I lose my voice. I don't get to say anything. I don't get to have any sort of jury trial to determine whether or not I am truly escaped slave X. Okay? I do not get to say a thing. What would happen is I would be dragged before a commissioner. So we would now have government, U.S. government officials, commissioner of escaped slaves. And this commissioner would hold a hearing. The slave catcher would bring the escaped slave, the person he says is an escaped slave, before the commissioner. The commissioner would then decide whether or not that person is free or not. But that person does not get to testify on their own behalf. The commissioner then, if the commissioner decides that that person is free, the commissioner is paid $5. But if the commissioner decides that that person is a slave, the commissioner is paid $10. That's equitable, right?
Yeah.
So, well, I can't speak on my own behalf, right? Okay. But, hey, Molly has my back here. And she sees that I have been wrongfully accused of being a slave. And so she comes into the hearing and she says, no, King's not a slave. But then the commissioner rules that I am. Now that it has been established that I am a slave, Molly can be fined or thrown in jail for now trying to aid this escaped slave from escape. So what is this law clearly designed to do? Yeah. Okay, so have any of you seen 12 Years a Slave? Yeah. That was something that happened, not necessarily because of this law. That was just a slave catcher grabbing somebody and dragging them into the South. And once they were dragged into the South, they lost all rights, all ability, until finally they could get a word to the North 12 years later to have somebody vouch for them as to who they were. under this system, you're basically making it impossible for someone to, if there was a concerted effort to enslave someone, nothing you can do about it. If there was any sort of escaped slaves, was there any real haven in the North under this law? No. Yeah?
Where do they send the slaves that they really not
Oh, so usually it would be somebody would be accusing them of being escaped slave Y, and they would be returned, quote, to that plantation. Sometimes it was a ruse. Sometimes it was a slave catcher intending to sell that person once they got south of the Mason-Dixon line. Meaning that as soon as I have somebody who's labeled a slave in my possession, what do? You sell it. Yeah.
So like Walker the slave, when he was being called by a different name, it's because that was the name of the city that.
Or the cover story they were using. Does that make sense? Anyway. So northern states, do they like this law? And what had happened to the institution of slavery? Before this law, slavery is kind of like child labor in China, right? Child labor in China, we know it's wrong, right? It's not a good thing. We sometimes like walk around with posters and say bad thing. But do we really do anything about it? Well, this is kind of what was happening with slavery when you were in the North. In the North, you knew that it was bad, but where was it bad? There. But with this fugitive slave law, what has just happened with the institution of slavery? What did it do to the institution of slavery? Yeah.
It's like brought the evils of slavery to the North.
Yeah. You have to be part of it now. You have to be enforced in the North, whether you believe it in or not. You could be here in Vermont, we're good. Not anymore. You have to be part of the system. So what northern states are going to start doing, states' rights. Northern states start saying, we're not going to enforce this law in our state. States' rights. Yeah, you can't make us. You can't make us enforce this law. States' rights. Y'all get the irony, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Northern states start passing what they called personal liberty laws. And they would say that they're in their state, that if you get accused of being a slave, you don't just get dragged to this commission. You are guaranteed a jury trial. You are guaranteed your voice. You are guaranteed your right to speak. Okay? Because this is Massachusetts. And our law is more important than the law of the United States. States' rights. And then what are southern states saying, as Massachusetts says that they've got personal liberty laws and they don't have to follow the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850? Well, you so do. That's the federal law. What's wrong with you, Massachusetts? Hey! Yo, that's the law. Follow the law. Right? So sum it up for me. So maybe the way to think about this is think of a southerner, what they're thinking, and a northerner, what do they think? Okay. Think of a southerner, what are they thinking at this point? And a northerner, what are they thinking? Try and put yourself into those mindsets. It's always about the relationship, right? The relationship.
Is this all claims ideas or
Well, would he have necessarily come up with each of the ideas? No, but he knew that these were the demands being made. And so he knew that if you're demanding this and they're demanding that, if we do both of them, maybe we can get along. Douglas is the one who figured out not putting it into one law, but separating it into the component parts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was.
Okay, so for the road. Okay, so let's see how y'all think. What do you think about this for the road? Do 3 and out. We'll do none and out. Okay, so I will see you.